Received with a strange delight. Overview. The movers and shakers of the Empire gather at Anvil for the summer solstice. Archmages and cardinals, generals and senators, they all come together to discuss recent events and plan for the future. Such gatherings of the rich and powerful draw others as well, those with goods to sell, secrets to trade, or business of their own to arrange. Syrup and smoke. For the last 6 months or so, Alexander of Axos has been coming to Anvil to sell strange Axu substances, narcotics and drugs with properties both recreational and allegedly medicinal. They've let slip that they will be visiting again during the summer solstice, although nobody seems clear on any details. They've attracted quite a bit of attention during their recent visits, often in conjunction with a merchant from Faradin with a similar line of business. This time, though, they appear to be by themselves, and are seeking private meetings with some of those they have spoken to before, rather than setting out their stall, as it were, at the forge to sell to all comers. Perhaps their reticence has to do with recent diplomatic considerations between the Empire and Axos. Regardless of what Alexander is doing, however, the faintest whiff of a suggestion that they might be up to something underhand has given a little more credence to rumours that the drugs being sold by the Axu and their peers from other foreign nations are not as harmless as they might appear. Nain of Gamel's Gate, a physic and herbalist who claims to make the best fever-fail elixir in Bastion, is one of the most vocal critics of this trade. Nain believes that unless properly scrutinised, use of these products should be considered dangerous and potentially unvirtuous. It is most unwise to assume that just because something makes you feel good, it is not bad for you. Nain has only limited support at the moment, but that does not stop her calling on the healers of the Empire, the Imperial Synod, and perhaps even the Imperial Conclave to investigate any mysterious new substances offered for sale in Anvil, and ascertain if they are safe to use. Nobody should need reminding of the bite fiasco. As a healer herself, she is concerned about the unwound coil, a drug from Axos with apparent medicinal use. Who has examined this substance? What precisely does it do? Nain is unable to attend Anvil herself at the moment, and indeed without evidence of grassroots support, has little reason to. Yet she is not alone in the firm belief that it is dangerous for the Empire to simply assume that new substances, whether narcotic or medicinal in nature, are by default virtuous and safe, and that should therefore be legal. The Conclave has recently shown itself willing to interdict a number of magic items that interact with the spirit of their wielders. Nain and those who agree with her ask that they consider doing the same to these novel narcotics. Dust and bones. During the spring equinox, Anvil received a visitor who claimed to have mixed Axu and Tarunial heritage. Rumour suggests that they and their family claim descent from the survivors of the Tarunial city of Kavan, which lies at the heart of Visakumo in Axos. Following that visit, they've been joined by a group of around 15 or so people who claim the same heritage. They are enthusiastically travelling the trods, particularly in the Southern Empire, and making a point of visiting every wayhouse they come across. They are keen to talk to members of the Navarre nation, although so far they have avoided visiting Herkinia or Theranin, or Brokeliand or Liathavan, but that is perhaps less surprising. They are a peculiar sight. In the terrible heat of this year's drought, they've been finding the traditional Axu heavy robes particularly onerous. Some of them have begun to adapt elements of traditional Navarre costume to help them travel under the implacable heat of the summer sun. They also carry with them a peculiar jar, apparently a relic of some kind, which they are eager to show to anyone who takes a vague interest. They're particularly interested when they hear that Fintan Nighthaven is urging people to bring relics of the past to Anvil. On the other hand, they are equally a little taken aback when they learn of Iniska Ashwood's claims that Taruniel is dead. Regardless, they have made it clear that they will bring their lekithos, as they call it, to Anvil at 7 o'clock on Friday, heading to the Navarre Woods entrance. They wish to show it to the Vates, but also to the other citizens who helped them last summit, Madra Brittlebone, Drafer Brackensong, Ellery Bronwyn's Rest, and of course Fintan Nighthaven. They are apparently looking forward to discussing the past, and possibly also the future. Cold and consequences. We recognise the desperation faced by those Suak living under Yotun occupation, and commend their courage and vigilance in refusing to hear whispers that would lead to dark bargains. Following the example of Hreifenhall, the hearths of Wintermark remain lit for their return. Sindri of Hreifenhall, Spring Equinox 383 YE, upheld, 130-0. As the Empire reclaims dominion over Semasuak, those citizens once forced into thraldom are liberated from bondage. While all are aware that the war may turn at any moment, it is still an occasion for rejoicing. Yet to some, the liberation of their homes is bittersweet. The resistance fighters of Semasuak, the self-proclaimed free mark, at last have the opportunity to set down their spears. Theirs has been a rocky path. Spurred to a brutal campaign of sabotage against the occupying Jotun, they have been left facing uncertainty about the future of their skeins. Dark rumours have dogged their paths. Stories of pacts with malevolent entities and deeds done in return for the power to fight back against the Western Orcs. Some of those stories have been all but confirmed by the warnings of the storm crows of Wintermark. Yet, as the tide turns on the frozen plains, the message of Sindri of Hreifenhall is repeated to those who will listen. The hearths remain lit for your return. Many of the fighters of the Free Mark perished fighting the Jotun. Some simply disappeared into the ice, their fates unknown. It is assumed that some, at least, have chosen to walk into Sindanjar rather than face the uncertain welcome of their fellow Suak. Many more survived, and those who did are returning home. It is hard for some to do so, their homes still bearing the marks of the recent occupation, but they slowly begin to attempt to rebuild their lives. Still, there are questions that remain unanswered. Some look askance at their former neighbours, whose actions prompted the crows to make so many statements urging them to come home. The winterfolk are not as a rule given to vicious gossip, but some still speculate how many of these returning fighters might have frayed their skeins. As rumours swirl, a message reaches Anvil. 2 of the former fighters of the Free Mark have decided to seek guidance about where their skeins might lead them next, should the war finally leave their homes alone. They will be accompanied by a stormcrow named Aedwin the Weaver, who has been helping to organise an effort to provide relief to those in the formerly occupied regions. They intend to arrive at Anvil around 9 p.m. on Friday evening and head to the Wintermark camp. Their message is brief and states that they wish to keep their discussions face to face, but they do indicate a desire to speak to stormcrows, skein readers, and any others who are invested in the future of those civilians who took up arms against the Jotun under dark circumstances. Hands and Hope. A week or so before the solstice, a tired and bedraggled huddle of Urizeni refugees arrive at the house of Guerra in Calvos. While most of the party avails themselves of the hostel services, an illuminate by the name of Eucleus eagerly asks to speak with the hand of Guerra. The staff at the refuge stress that they can assist with any matters in the absence of the hand of Guerra, who has recently set out for Anvil. They are somewhat dismayed, however, when what Eucleus wants is not food and a place to rest, but to ask deep philosophical questions about the nature of existence. Eucleus is a devoted philosopher, and has taken a specific interest in the hand of Guerra, owing to the office's responsibility of spreading the philosophy of Guerra to the Empire, and indeed the world. On discovering that the hand is not available, the impulsive philosopher immediately sets off for the nearest trod that will take them to Anvil in pursuit of the hand, themselves pursued by a world-weary spy-mate named Valerius. Eucleus will be arriving in Anvil at 6:30 on Saturday, with the intention of discussing the philosophy of Guerra, and other philosophical topics no doubt, with both the hand of Guerra and anyone else who wishes to join the conversation. Valerius will allegedly keep Eucleus from causing too much trouble, but apparently intends to also deal with another matter. Valerius is deeply concerned with the financial needs of the spy in exile, and is bringing an important family heirloom with intent to sell it, to secure funds to start a new life far from Urizen, for themselves and their spy mates. They have asked the Hand of Guerra to help facilitate the sale of the item. They have apparently already sent details ahead, and their letter may well reach Anvil before they do. Anyone interested in purchasing this treasure should find Valerius, or possibly Eucleus, in the Brass Coast encampment on Saturday evening. Salt and Sand. There is a little consternation at Crown's Quay on the Necropolitan coast when a sleek Grendel ship arrives in dock in something of a rush. They do not have any of the proper paperwork required by imperial tariffs, but they claim they aren't here to trade and don't need them. The captain and his first mate disappear with hardly a word, merely handing a coin to anyone who tries to ask them questions until they go away. The civil servants on the dock in particular are annoyed at this flagrant attempt at bribery. But a few minutes later, a harassed-looking young Grendel orc runs off the ship, and with a long-suffering sigh, fills out the proper forms and weathers the inevitable bollocking from the local magistrate. "Cultural misunderstanding," she pleads. "Please be patient. It's an emergency." Meister, Comyn and Lear, the captain and the first mate respectively, are off to Anvil again. It is only a few months since their last visit, and they're not wasting a moment. Apparently, whatever it is that has lit such a fire under them is something to do with the evacuation of Ferros. While trying to persuade an unruffled civil servant to let them get straight on the road to Anvil without delay, the Meister apparently claimed that "they're in terrible danger," and "the Cardinal themselves will hear of it if you delay us." But before anyone could work out who they are, what the danger might be, which Cardinal, and why they might care, the two Grendel had already left for Anvil. The pair apparently make all haste through Necropolis towards Cassinia. In their wake there is some discussion about what might have put the traditionally svelte and smarmy Grendel in such a tizzy. Why would any Grendel care about the fate of the few human citizens left in Ferros? The orcs refuse to answer questions, but when the mighty warrior Lear loses his temper and snaps back at a highborn warrior on the road, his answer is simply, "Virtue, you prick!" They will arrive on the Anvil field early on Friday evening before 8 p.m, and have indicated that they will be heading for the Freeborn encampment. Song and Silver. And finally, the Silver Frame Carter of Sarvos is an old guild of the City of Masks known to have made and secured its wealth through trade in objets d'art. For nearly a century there have been rumours in Sarvos society that the Carter are more than happy to deal in artworks of less than ideal provenance. There is debate among antiquarians, collectors and art historians alike around how close to the line the Carter sails, and whether there is any truth to the conjecture that they began as little more than criminal fences and pawnbrokers in the gutters of Carricamare. Whatever they may have done to build up their fortune, however, nobody can deny that they are generous patrons of the arts. They regularly provide funds to theatres and galleries, as well as patronising individual artists whose work might otherwise not come to prominence. They are also quite shrewd in their investments, and while the Carter may be tainted with the air of criminality, they are still active members of the Sarvosan business community. They rarely stir outside Sarvos, however, and as such, it is notable that the merchant prince of the Silver Frame, the ageing Ezra von Sarvos, has apparently taken a particular interest in the new High Bard of the Empire, Eudoxia of the Temple of the Wanderer. For Ezra to have left the guild house in Sarvos, practically unheard of in the last decade and a half, and to have travelled all the way to Anvil is reason enough for gossip by themselves, never mind the fact that they are intending to call upon the High Bard in the Urizen camp at 10 a.m. on the Saturday of the summer equinox.